Hello and welcome to Manibil. This will be my third follow-up to my mind-body confusion video. And yes, Mr. Jørgen is was roaming again in my comment section, and thank you for that. I'm a little ambivalent with you, Jørgen. I've since you're a smart guy, you are not, arriving at the 5 o'clock train, right? As they say. Um, but I also sense a bit of this. I hesitate to call it passive aggressive. It's like stating something, and then when people respond, tell them, no, you have misunderstood it, right? No, you have misunderstood it, right? It's a bit like, oh, come on, man, right? I mean, first of all, okay, let me just take a little bit of it here, right? Let me just take a little. Let me see if I can. Can I make this a little bigger here to make it more visible on the screen? Yeah, I think so. It works. Seems to work. Jordan 586 writes, "It seems to me that you have misunderstood the intention of my comment on your previous video." Well, I cannot misunderstand, first of all, right? I cannot misunderstand your intention because I don't know what your intention is because I do not have access to it, right? Come on, mate. Come on. Come on, man. I can't misunderstand your intention because I don't know what your intention is, right? How could I possibly know that? And then you clarify, I was not trying to make an argument for in a strictly philosophical stance. Okay, so these are fluffy boundaries, right? It's not strictly philosophical. It's more like something else, right? Moving the goalpost a little and saying, no, you have misunderstood my whatever, right? It's sort of, I just find it passive aggressive, right? Now, then you say, I'm getting to a point here, right? I am describing an everyday context. Okay, let's just call it context, where people generally live in the belief that what they experience as an external physical world is in fact an external physical world. That is the external objects. Let's stop it there. He says, I am describing an everyday context where people generally live in the belief that what they experience as an external physical world is in fact an external. But if they experience it as a physical world, it must be a physical world. Choose your language wisely, mate. Right? I know that I make mistakes here, and when I listen back to some of my videos, I have misspoken. There are a few places where I've screwed up, and it makes no sense. And okay, too bad, right? But if you that what they experience as an external world, what does that mean? Experience as an external world, is that the external world you're saying, or what is in fact an external physical world? So they are not experiencing an actual external physical world. They think it is, but it's not the actual external physical world. But now you're saying there is actually an external physical world. This level of philosophy can sometimes be so goddamn freaking convoluted. And I know that language is limited. The everyday language that we have to use, or that you could invent a new language for metaphysics, but who would understand it? You would have to say translate it into common language in order for other people to understand it, and then it would be fruitless to have that new language, right? So we are stuck with a language that is not made for metaphysics. I understand that, but that's why I'm saying choose your statements wisely, right? Okay, so condensing this thing here a bit, right? This one. I have understood your intention. By intention, I'm willing to translate that as I'm misunderstanding what you're trying to say. I can misunderstand your intentions because I don't have access to them. And I'm not trying to judge your intentions, right? And if that comes across, well, fine, but that's just my hazarding a guess then. I can't get to it. And I'm not interested in your intentions as such, right? Okay. But then you say, I'm describing an everyday context where people generally, that is people all over the world, right? Live in the belief that what they experience, you have just access to 8.3 billion people and their beliefs, right? Just like because you're Jurland, right? But me spending 40 minutes trying to deconstruct your comment, I misunderstand you, right? But of course, because I misunderstand you, but you are special. You understand what goes on in 8.3, however many people on Earth and their beliefs about their metaphysics, right? Of course, because you're sort of special, apparently, right? Give me a break, man. Then this is sort of stepping onto the scene and saying, argument, stepping back, and then I say, okay, interesting argument, I don't understand this, maybe I agree with that, and then you say, no, you misunderstand me, right? That's sort of passive-aggressive in my opinion, right? Okay. The next one. That is the external object's attributes, such as shape, texture, and color. That is, now you're devil's advocate. You are trying to present their argument, as far as I understand, right? That is, the external object's attributes, such as shape, texture, color, are properties that belong to the external object. So that's not your argument, right? That is you telling me what you think they have, how they argue. That shapes and texture and color is a part of objects. Yes, because object is also, when you cognize an elephant, right? There's not an elephant arriving through your senses somehow, right? Elephant, an object, is something you attach to your experience. And that be shapes and colors and textures or whatever that makes you cognize that. So if you understand this correctly, then you're saying that they think that shapes, textures, and colors are something that is a part of something outside. Otherwise, I don't understand what you're trying to say here, because then you're completely screwed up, metaphysically, right? What you see is what is. Okay, so are you an old, web designer or something, WYSIWYG? What you see is what is. Then if one wants to suggest that it might be this way, okay, so you were devil's advocate. You're trying to say, okay, then if we or you or I step in, try to say, maybe those you call objects and colors are not out there, but in there, something like that. Okay. The right starting point is not to assume that people in general possess the capacity for formal scientific or philosophical reasoning. Oh, no. No, they're stupid. They need to start with a metaphor, right? They need to, they can't handle the big thing, right? I don't buy that. I don't buy that for one freaking second. Because that is, I will categorize that as a trick to lure people in using stupid argumentation structures that is not valid in order to get them aboard, right? Under the pretense of, it's much better if you just keep it simple for the little people, they can't manage it anyway, right? I don't buy that, right? If you can't argue for groundbreaking or ground floor philosophy to anybody, then there's a problem with it. It's too convoluted. It's too fluffy. It's too bloated. It's too academic. There's something wrong. It doesn't have to be that complicated. I'm not buying that, right? Now, you might approach you might, first of all, try to point to as I actually tried with a dude called Stefan Molyneux a year ago or so, where I went on his show and tried to explain to him that he suffers from, naive realism, right? Materialism, physicalism, whatever you want to call it. And tried to explain to him that it doesn't work, it's paradoxical. And he basically started yelling at me and threw me off the show, that idiot, right? But what I'm trying to get at is creating a metaphor is manipulation. Try to appeal directly to the experience, right? Because you can't know if somebody has an experience, but then you're pointing to the source of everything that could potentially end up being, for instance, a metaphor or an analogy, right? But that's not the thing itself. From the definition of the term, it's an analogy or it's a metaphor. So when you've done the metaphor, you should be there then stepping in and saying, okay, now I'm going to explain the real thing for you. No. He doesn't do that, Bernardo Kastrup, right? He stays with that metaphor, and it's sufficient for him. If people want to go there, it's sufficient for him that people are lured into it, right? Maybe he suffers from a weird kind of materialism where he thinks that because, as I pointed out in the recent video I made, I forget what it's called, dualism, monism, dissociation and combination, something like that, right? That when you identify the problem in physicalism, you attract into, you have access to experiences, then you sort of forget that you always have to remove the idea of an outside, because all you have is your experiences. Then you keep that outside as still being there, while you just refuted it using an appeal to the paradox built into the thinking, right? He keeps that outside and says, well, of course there's an outside, right? I have never seen anything that is remotely close to a rigid philosophical argumentation. And if you say, oh yeah, but the little people, no, they can't handle this big thing, right? No, we need to give them the analogies and the metaphors, and then they will, right? Why not try emphasize and do it rigidly, right? Correctly. Not this fluffy metaphor shit, right? That is sort of for the little people. Try it on for size, right? You say use metaphors such as dashboard to describe an alternative point of view. An alternative point. We are not dealing with points of view here, right? This is ground floor metaphysics. It's not a point of view. And why are you using that term? That's just, it's like, this is just my point of view. No. Philosophy is not about points of view. Philosophy is about rigid argumentation, right? Structure and argued from A to B to C and so on, right? It's not a point of view. Such as a dashboard to describe a view. Yeah, okay, so let's say you have a view which is sort of maybe another way of saying that's my philosophy. Okay, let's say that. Then you should not describe your conclusion when you're describing philosophy. You should describe what goes on that enables you to get from A to B, right? If A is I have experiences and B is there's something outside my experiences, then show me the steps rather than saying I have come to this conclusion and now I'm going to throw a metaphor at you to illuminate what I mean. That's not philosophy. Philosophy is how did you get from A to B, right? And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody of these people who don't want to apparently use an axiom that appeals or implicitly argues as if something follows from the next in a way that doesn't seem to work. That doesn't seem to actually point to that which it is alluding to, right? It's sort of I use a metaphor and I use a word like perception, and then all of a sudden this new realm appears out of the words somehow. That's not good enough for me, right? I just want it straight up, right? I see nothing wrong with that. Well, I see a lot of things wrong with that, as I just pointed out, right? I don't like I'm going to explain my conclusions to you, right? I don't care about your conclusions. I care about how you get from A to B. I have my own philosophy, thank you very much, right? So if you say to me, I disagree with your conclusion, then I will not say, no, I have the right conclusion. And you will say, no, I have the right conclusion, right? And then we can see my conclusion is right and no, your conclusion is right. That's stupid. That's childish. What we would do is go back to a common ground further back in the string of argumentations and say, where do we have common ground? And then we find out both our argumentation structures to figure out why we get to different conclusions, right? That's how it's supposed to be, man. Because most people take for granted that there is a world out there that one's senses detect. Yeah, but that's an axiom. And they're just saying, well, I am going to say that the world out there is the same as my experiences, because that's sort of the default setting of human beings, I believe, right? I believe that popularized versions with simplified models of scientific theories and philosophical ideas are needed to spread ideas to a wider population. Oh, we have to dumb it down for the little people, right? I don't buy that. Don't give me that bullshit, right? It's like, no, we can't give them the real story because they're too stupid, right? So we have to give them the light, philosophy light, and even mainstream pop philosophy in order to get them on board, whatever, right? Okay, you could say, okay, fair enough. If that works for you, I'm not buying it, right? But okay, I mean, if that's your avenue, okay. But would you mind? Would you mind? Before you do that, try me first with the hardcore version of the argument, rather than just throwing a conclusion and a metaphor at me, right? Try the hard way to argue from A to B, right? Try to argue from the solipsist position or the Cartesian ground floor, how you argue that there must be something outside. If that's what you're trying to argue, at least, right? Please, give me the hardcore version first. Even if it means sacrificing some academic rigor, okay, yeah. Or maybe sacrificing academic rigor is a euphemism for I don't know what I'm talking about. I have some fancy conclusion that I came up with that I like, and I'm going to cloud them and shroud them in a dumbed down metaphor, right? That might be what is actually going on, right? I think that some of Bernardo, I might point out that I don't find Bernardo Kastrup to be rigorous. I find him to be quite sophist in his approach, right? And his way of, it's not he's not using the same approach in all situations. It's like he has a cherry picky fashion, right? When I'm doing this, and then I take some science. Oh, over here science don't work. Now I'm going to use some mysticism and whatever, right? And over here I'm using rigid philosophy, and then I have a conclusion here. Now I'm going to add a metaphor. It's not the same way of doing it, right? There's not a meta-philosophy here. There's not a structure of philosophizing. It's more like, now I'm doing, bringing in what I need to connect the dots in the direction. That's what I'm seeing very much, right? So I don't find his academic, means rigorous, right? or its philosophical argumentation structure rigorous. I don't find it to be that, right? So don't dumb it down further, because then it will just become even less rigorous, right? But as I said before, try me with the big, fancy, rigorous academic argument, right? Try it. I haven't seen it yet, right? So it's like, oh, the starting point is we have to dumb it down. Maybe because we actually do not have the philosophy, right? I think that some of Bernardo Kastrup's videos should be seen in such a context. Oh, you think, okay, I'm good for you, right? Finally, a question. If you are not a solipsist, how do you reason yourself out of solipsism? Who says I have to do that? I might just be sitting here talking to my experiences, and that's all there is to it, right? Why do I have to reason myself out of solipsism? It's like you have to do that. Why do I have to do that? I don't have to do that, right? If you feel like you have to do it, fine. But don't tell me what I have to do, right? I mean, the ground floor is solipsistic. You can't get around it as such, right? When you do the reduction or Cartesian doubt, whatever you call it, right? You end up in something that is solipsist. I think, therefore I am, is solipsist, right? You don't have to stay with solipsism. I don't stay with solipsism, right? But I'm not arguing myself away out of it. I am accepting that my ground floor is solipsist. But what I do is I add some axioms in my philosophy, because I need them to give that particular meaning to my experience that I need in order to make sense of it. You don't have to do it the same way, right? You don't have to do it the same way. I'm just telling you how I do it, right? And I am criticizing other people's way of doing it and trying to point out weaknesses in their way of arguing, right? I'm not saying they can't have their philosophy. They can have their philosophy all they want. I'm just not buying it, right? It's like a marketplace. Bernardo Kastrup has some, he's selling his philosophy. You're selling your philosophy. And you might want to make a video, right? And show me your philosophy. Show me these fancy philosophy you have, where you have these kinds of insights. And you argued yourself out of solipsism or whatever it is, right? Make some videos, man. Go do it. It's a marketplace, right? I see not philosophy as somebody sitting there in the ivory tower handing out pamphlets of this is how it is, right? It's like philosophy has to be personal. It has to be individual. It has to be your philosophy. All philosophy is somebody's philosophy, right? Even though they stand there on their mountaintops and preach to as if they are gods descending from heaven telling everybody what to do, right? And the most notable example of that is that all morality or ethics that I have seen has always been telling other people what to do. It's never what I have seen, right? It might be there out there, and if it is, please show me. I want to see it, right? It has always been telling other people what to do, or lecturing them, or punishing them, or whatever it is, right? I have never seen any morality that says, this is what I'm going to do, right? You don't have to, right? Why can't it be like that? Why can't it be? But this is my philosophy. This is my ethics. And I have arrived at this moral principle. And I'm fucking going to follow it, right? All moral philosophers seems to want to end up, or think they have to end up in a position where they can see, you have to do like this, right? When the actual thing is, what you should end up in my opinion, is, this is what I am going to do, right? And therefore you need your philosophy, right? The ground floor is solipsistic or solipsist, right? You don't have to reason your way out of it. I would just say, the way I reason is that I can't live with an experience and treat it as if it's solipsist, as if there's no meaning to the experience. But I can't get the meaning from the experience itself. I can't deduce some meaning from it, right? That would be something that has been implanted in me earlier, right? If I say, well, the meaning of cow is this, or the meaning of bicycle is this, and whatever, right? Therefore, you can't get to a meaning of life, because there is no meaning that you can deduce from anything that is a part of your experience, right? And if you do that, you're just attaching it, right? And usually what people do, they attach whatever they've been told the meaning is. And that, I'm not buying that, right? But since you can't extract meaning from your experience, if you want meaning, you have to attach it yourself, right? Or not meaning in the sort of meaning of life meaning, but more in the what Hume might call understanding, the understanding, right? What's the understanding? The understanding is this, that, and the other, right? The colors and sounds and qualia, and the cognitions and the abstractions and principles and models and whatever, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm attaching a understanding to my experience. And that's how I work. Because if I'm sitting here talking and you are out there receiving, so to say, right? It would be weird if I said I was solipsist, wouldn't it? Because why the hell would I sit here talking to you, right? And I think that's sort of a point that, has been, pounded millions of times, right? As Kastrup also points out, the symposium of solipsists, right? Sitting there and not so. Why would they even go there, right? Why would they not just lie somewhere and wait to die, right? Or wait for whatever they are waiting for, right? And not even waiting, just being, nothing. I can't even imagine it, I think, right? So I have never experienced solipsists, and maybe for good reasons, because they're not interacting, right? So, and I think even if there were somebody telling you, I'm a solipsist, if you look at them, they wouldn't behave as if they were solipsist. They would behave as if there's meaning to whatever you would expect them to experience based on your experience in the context you're in at that particular situation, right? So it doesn't make sense to be solipsist or claim it, right? But that doesn't mean that your experience isn't solipsist at the foundations. I'm fully convinced of that, right? When you really do the Cartesian doubt, you end up in something like, I think, therefore I am, right? You can say that what Descartes says, okay, I have experiences and I'm aware of my experiences, but there's no given meaning to the experience. It might just be a demon outside, right? Just screwing around with me, right? But what I can say is, says Descartes, no matter why they're there, how they're there, or what the hell these experiences are, I am aware of these experiences. That awareness you cannot take away, right? Because for me to talk about and philosophize about these experiences, I must be aware of them, right? I have these experiences and I'm aware of them, therefore I am, right? So there are experiences and there is awareness, right? That's solipsist. How do you go from there? I think I have tried to illuminate you on that in a lot of the recent videos, so I don't really understand your question, other than you're just trying to keep this Netflix series of videos here going, right? And I'm fine with that. I like a bit of back and forth, right? The old in out. That's a Kubrick Clockwork Orange reference. Never mind. But what can I say? Thank you for your comment and your clarifications. I have given you my 2 cents, right? And you can take it for what you think it's worth. I try to argue rigidly and seriously. I'm not in the business of hunting people down or getting people down to get satisfaction. Yeah, I could use some, fancy, whatever argument, and then people will doubt Bernardo Kastrup, and then I will satisfied because, vengeful or something like that. No, I mean, I'm specifically asking for an argument, right? And he doesn't want to give it to me, right? He has blocked me on Twitter and he's threatened me with murder and violence for deconstructing his videos and so on, right? So I don't find him to be a good person, not in any case that it not be a nice way of trying to create a discourse, right? I'm apparently not. I'm one of those who have to, read the metaphors. I can't get the real because I'm not fancy. I don't have 2 PhDs, and I haven't lived in the Hadron Collider, whatever, right? So he's sort of lit up on high there, pissing down on you like a French waiter, right? He has a bit of that arrogance, I think, right? He wants to come across as something. Oh, I'm so nice and a good little Christian boy. But I think he's kind of under the hood. I think he's a bit of an asshole. I think I could be wrong, but I think he's sort of a little arrogant, right? And he's sort of on the surface he's the nice guy, but if I make a deconstruction of one of his videos, which he should applaud and say thank you for doing it, right? Even if it was crazy what I'm saying, which I don't think it is. He should say, great, somebody doing something with what I'm saying, right? No. He wants to sit and deconstruct Schopenhauer and deconstruct Jung and deconstruct who the fuck knows what Swedenborg. But nobody should touch his fancy, perfect philosophy, right? No, I'm not buying that, right? So just give me the fucking argument. Give me the argument from I think therefore I am to there must be an outside. Give it to me. Give me the full Monty, right? Give me the full thing. Give me the rigor. Give me the big fancy argument. Give it to me, right? Okay. See you in the next one.